How has self-protection changed in the past 20 years or so? And what changes can we expect to see in the next 5 to 10 years? My name is Jamie Clubb. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, like and share, and leave a comment below. Hello, I'd like to thank Tracy Radley of Kuritan Practical Karate for asking me this question. By Tracy's own admission, it's a huge topic and not one that I can do justice in a single episode. Therefore, please see this particular video as an overview of my answer. To be clear, Tracy's question is directly addressing self-protection as an overall topic. She wishes me to discuss the changing threats and solutions, as well as the changing tools and weapons used by both attackers and defenders over the last 20 or so years. These vlogs are not focused on reality-based self-defense systems and their trends within martial arts subculture. My answer will only concern what I call direct frontline threats to civilians. Primarily, these are crimes of direct interpersonal violence and sexual assaults. To a lesser yet unavoidable extent, it also concerns some antisocial crimes, only because they often have a very close relationship with the previously mentioned offences. Other threats that I won't be discussing are fraud and theft, as well as the dangers related to having poor health. Although all three are hugely important areas any self-protection teacher and practitioner should be concerned with, for reasons outlined in other podcasts and vlogs, to include them here would shift the focus of this particular topic. The turn of the 21st century, just like the turn of any new year, decade or century, didn't look very different from the previous era. Although 1990s violent crime had seen spikes, it fell quite dramatically in much of the developed world. Certain rare yet industrial age defining predatory crimes like serial killing showed a considerable decline in that decade. Likewise, I interviewed members of the new generation of door security in clubs and bars who inherited their posts from those who worked these exact same spots in the 1980s, and they also described there being comparatively less violence. However, there was one significant outlier. Throughout the 20th century, a type of spree killing known as mass shooting showed a significant increase towards the end of the century. Although it was once described as a uniquely American problem, school shootings, a specific subset of the spree-killing crime, worsened across the globe, and in particular Asia, Europe and Africa. The main focus given by the media to these crimes was on a supposed trend of murderous students. This was especially the case in the US, but other types of perpetrators showed up across the globe. One of these was a type of criminal that arguably set the violent tone for the past 2 decades: international and domestic terrorism. The 9/11 tragedy of 2001, the deadliest terrorist attack in history, changed society as we knew it. The attack was not to be an isolated incident. It heralded a rise in international and domestic terrorism on a large scale, continuing with other attacks in countries outside of the USA. Institutions from the police to schools reacted with programs to deal with radicalisation and to stem the development of violent domestic terrorism. Then there was the actual threats themselves, which were carried out by organised suicidal killers. This type of enemy, occurring on a domestic level in the developed world, was like no other. It also inspired a violent reactionary backlash, which moves us on to the returned rise of an old enemy. Violent hate crime, quite literally the cause of a world war in the previous century, became difficult to ignore again in the 21st century. Not only have we seen it in the rise of direct action racist groups, often using terrorist attacks as a motivation for their own form of terrorism, but it also surfaced in a variety of different forms. East Asians were targeted at the turn of the 2020s in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. With mainstream society seeing more overt acceptance and celebration of sexual diversity and identification, we've seen a rise of hate crime focused on members of the LGBTQ community. Technology in many different ways has impacted on violent crime. Networks of sexual abusers, especially criminals who target children, have grown in size, scale and organisation due to the way the dark web can connect more like-minded offenders. The same might be said for the aforementioned violent terrorist and hate groups. Social media culture reinforced a sense of entitlement amongst some criminals to intrude on the privacy of others. Stalkers could use the internet as an extra tool to pursue the lives of their prey, leading to the creation of cyberstalking. Such stalking behaviour, whilst traumatic and illegal as an isolated crime, was often a precursor to direct physical assault. The use of handheld recording devices such as mobile phones shaped the trend of happy slapping in the 2000s. This was where assaults were carried out in order to create video content to be shared online. This also allowed bullies to prolong their persecutions outside of schools and the workplace through cyberbullying. Again, even if a target was not being physically bullied, this type of online abuse should be seen as a psychological assault and sometimes a motivator for the bullies to become physical in order to record the event. Technology also has self-protection benefits. Tracking devices for parents and improved methods for directly connecting to emergency services have become standard in most modern devices. They have become a valuable means for producing evidence against criminals and can also act as a useful deterrent. Furthermore, victims and concerned citizens can and have created effective support networks, as well as being provided with a means for better connecting with law enforcement. We have also seen the rise in the use of various types of so-called date rape drugs. Up until the 2010s, spiking drinks with drugs was regarded largely as a type of urban myth. It was put that it did happen, but not with much regularity. When researching the topic, I was told back in the 2000s that many cases usually involve the victim being taken advantage of when they were drunk beyond the point of being able to consent, rather than being spiked with a drug. However, during the 2010s it was revealed that drugging drinks was far more common than had first been thought, and worse still, more effective drugs were now in use. The 2020 lockdown restrictions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic saw a specific rise in domestic abuse. Furthermore, the ramifications on the mental health of individuals, particularly young people, cannot be overstated, and we have yet to see the extent of that damage. To briefly address Tracy's second question, we're going to see an increase of violent crime connected to mental health issues and stemming from an increase of antisocial behaviour. Statistically, many developed countries, including my own, are experiencing a rise in violent crime that is exceeding the level before lockdown. With more time directed towards the internet, we've seen an overall increase in online criminal behaviours, resulting in violent outcomes. It's my intention to go over these topics in more depth in individual vlogs where we'll cover different brackets of years. For the time being though, I think it's important to leave with 2 points. One is that despite what we're seeing at the moment, we are living in one of the safest times in recorded history. If we take the long view, matters are a lot safer now than they were 100 years ago in general day-to-day living. So it's very important to keep this in mind and keep this perspective in mind so that we don't move into paranoia. Obviously, it's dependent on where you live. Certain places are getting a lot better than other places, whereas some places are certainly a lot worse than they were decades ago. But for the most part in the developed world, we do see an overall move to improvement and safer living. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and leave a comment below.